never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
Nothing gets me more wound up, more excited than watching the sneaky liberals have a go at each other. And that's exactly what AOC has done once again to President-elect Joe Biden. Man, is she on a roll. She's just throwing all of her Democratic colleagues under the bus. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and now the President-elect of the United States. So last night, Joe Biden came on national TV, which was quite unbearable to listen to, but nevertheless, I guess we're going to have to for the next 4 years. But he comes on to talk about his COVID relief plan. Okay, fine. Let's hear it, Joe. Well, he discusses the same exact stuff that President Trump basically already rolled out, word for word. And Joe Biden's big next 100-day plan is to get 100 million shots in the arms of Americans. I mean, this was kind of already the plan, wasn't it? I mean, we said months ago during Operation Warp Speed that the plan was to get as many vaccines out to the American people as public. And what's even more funny about the whole situation, I listened to Nancy Pelosi this morning live on Fox News discuss how she was extremely upset and extremely frustrated that President Trump wasn't getting the vaccine out quick enough. Well, wait a second. I thought just a couple weeks ago, or at least a month ago, that the whole rollout was Biden's big idea, or it was at least the pharmaceuticals' success, and that Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. Do you guys remember that a few weeks ago when everybody was saying when we finally got the vaccination out that, well, President Trump didn't have anything to do with this? The pharmaceutical companies are the one responsible for getting the vaccine out in warp speed. And we kind of said, well, no, President Trump actually coordinated the efforts amongst all of these different people to get the vaccine out. But the Democrats refused to accept that. They said, nope, this was all the pharmaceutical companies doing. They deserve the real credit here. This is the healthcare industry's doing. Well, now that all these states have completely screwed up the entire distribution and look like absolute idiots, these different governors, because we now have vaccines sitting in warehouses and they can't even coordinate them getting them to the American people. Now that it's completely screwed up on a state level, guess who's to blame? Oh, of course, President Trump. Well, Biden comes on national TV last night and discusses his big plan to roll out all of the vaccines. AOC didn't like that. She slams him. Let's head over to the keyboard warrior cam and take a look at all the chaos and the absolute insanity of, yet again, AOC running her big mouth in Washington, attacking her own colleagues, and now the president-elect of the United States. So as you can see here, Republican AOC is criticizing President-elect Biden's new coronavirus relief, arguing that it doesn't go far enough to help people in need during the pandemic. Where does AOC get off? I mean, did anybody teach her insubordination class? I mean, did she take an insubordination class in college? Because this girl, all she does is run her mouth and constantly throw her colleagues under the bus every opportunity that she can. Just a few weeks ago, she was trying to tell us that, yeah, it was about time that we replace Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Now, that's probably the only thing that I've ever agreed on AOC with. And listen, we all have to admit here, these old-time dinosaurs in Washington have to go. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. It's like the blind leaving the blind here. Really, if they did Dumb and Dumber 3, because I know they've already done Dumb and Dumber 2, if they did Dumb and Dumber 3, it really would be Nancy Pelosi, starring Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. But they got to go. And we know that. But the thing is, AOC shouldn't be the one really recommending that. I don't think she's put in enough time. Nevertheless, here she is, once again, attacking her Democratic colleagues. Only this time, it's the President of the United States. So AOC says, criticizes Biden for his new corona relief package. So what is exactly new about this? Because as far as I was concerned, I thought Trump already came out with the relief, or I thought Congress already came out with the relief package, then threw it over to Trump, and Trump said, I want to take that $600, move it up to $2,000. Congress said, okay, we'll go back and think about it, which I don't think they really did, but here we are. Let's take a look at exactly what AOC is criticizing. So as we can see here, Republican or Representative AOC from New York is criticizing President-elect Biden's new corona relief, arguing that it doesn't go far enough to help people in need during the pandemic. So what exactly were we talking about here? We're talking about Biden's stimulus plan. Okay, Biden, what part of the stimulus plan are you now taking credit for? Because as far as I was concerned, this whole thing was done and dusted weeks ago. We're talking about an increased payment that would cost $1.9 trillion. The most people would end up with is a total of $2,000 in stimulus, including the $600 checks dispensed in recent legislation. Are you as confused as I am? Because Trump already encouraged Congress to increase the $600 payment to $2,000. So what exactly is new here? What's the new part of this plan? I'm trying to understand. So not only did Biden completely hijack Trump's stimulus relief package, but then AOC blames Biden for not doing enough. It wasn't even his in the first place. Like I said, it's kind of like the blind leading the blind here in Washington right now. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that over the next few years. At least it's going to be something that I can report constantly on, and it'll be quite entertaining for all of us to watch. That's the one thing we've really gained here from the Democrats taking back the White House. So we've got Biden now saying, I want $2,000 stimulus checks for the American people. Okay, that's not really anything new. That was always the case, Biden. If you want to go ahead and hijack that, that's fine. After all, he is known for plagiarism. That's why he didn't end up running for president back in the 80s, because he got busted for plagiarism during his campaign, and he backed down. So plagiarism's Biden's thing, and AOC throwing her colleagues under the bus is her thing. So $2,000 stimulus checks, including $600. So what exactly is AOC criticizing here? Well, she's criticizing that no, Biden didn't say that. Biden promised during the Georgia state runoff that he would be throwing an additional $2,000. Because remember, this is what the Democrats do. They love to just piss away money. They love to throw money out to the American people with zero disregard to what it's going to do to inflation, what it's going to do to our future generations, how much we're going to have to pay back other countries for borrowing this money. They don't care. They just love to give away free money. Bernie Sanders is truly on board with the situation. And why wouldn't he be? Because he is the king of all socialists. So that's the direction we're heading. Free money for everybody. AOC said, nope, it's supposed to be $2,000 plus the $600 that was already promised. So, but that wasn't enough. So the $2,000 wasn't enough for AOC, who appeared to want the latest checks to reach $2,000 as she and others have repeatedly requested. $2,000 means $2,000. Does not mean $1,400. She told the Post. And again, this is because she misunderstood. She misinterpreted Biden pledging, which again is complete ridiculousness in itself, that Biden came out and pledged $2,000 to all Americans during the Georgia, or at least those who need it, during the Georgia runoff. That wasn't a new pledge. That was something that Congress already promised Trump that he would do weeks ago. It's very typical, sneaky, liberal politics coming in once again and stealing something that wasn't even theirs in the first place. But like I said, that's just what we're going to have to deal with. That's the way of the land. And it's just pretty funny to now see all of them getting in a heated argument over something that none of them even came up with in the first place. Let's head back over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what the American people have to say about AOC slamming her boss. So Chris says $1 trillion or $1.9 trillion isn't enough. Exactly. It's plenty. I don't think we need to bump it up even more. This country's already in a tremendous amount of financial danger. Ella says, of course she does. She has a problem with everything. From day one with apartment hunting, no money given in Washington from, to now always something with this one. And it really is. It's never ending with those AOC. It's never enough. But listen, I hate to break it to you guys, but that's what millennials do. They always want more for pretty much nothing. That's their MO. That's what they grew up thinking, that we don't need to work for it. We don't need to fight for it. We don't need to hustle. We're millennials. We just expect everything to be handed to us on a silver platter. So it's no surprise that AOC is kind of putting her hand out and saying, I want more, without really putting in my time. It's a millennial thing. Let's see what else American people have to say. And now they turn on each other. That's right. That's what they do. They've turned on each other. Once again, AOC is turning on her bosses, turning on her colleagues, and it's no surprise. Joe says, but it funds foreign countries. We've kind of beaten this one to death. We know that most of the stimulus package goes out to foreign countries. It's outrageous that we're even considering it with so much need here, right here in the United States, with so many people hurting, with veterans starving on the streets. We're considering sending $1 billion overseas. It's just ridiculous that we're even in discussing this argument in the first place. But our government seems to want to take care of the foreign allies more than they do their own people. So that's nothing new. It's something that we've had to deal with moving forward. You know what I think we really should be doing? Why don't? Because the government's managing all of our money. At the end of the day, it is our taxpayer dollars at the end of the day, right? I think moving forward that we really need to be voting collectively as Americans on what we do with such outrageous amounts of money. This voting for one candidate thing and then just trusting them to do their job over the next 4 years, 8 years, however long they're in their positions, has got to stop. We elect these people who promise to work for us based on what they said they would do. Then they go to Washington, and if they suddenly decide to change their mind, they're allowed to do that. What happened to contractual obligations to your constituents? I feel that if they turn their back on us, we should be able to yank them out just like you would anyone who abandons their contract. Anyway, at the very least, we should have a little bit more of a say on what we do with all of this money. Because at the end of the day, our government has proven time and time again that they cannot handle our money. They cannot handle our tax dollars responsibly. Because look at the absolute mess that we are now in. Social Security is broke. Medicaid's broke. We as a country are broke. Our states are broke. How broke do we have to be for the American people to wake up and say, you know what? I don't think you should be managing our money anymore. And we need to now make changes with how we allow our government to handle our finances. Pete says, she is right. It doesn't send money to other countries that could be used to help the U.S. Again, the foreign investment has got to stop. We are over contributing to our foreign counterparts, and we're not getting enough in return. Louis says the Democratic Party will destroy each other. I will sit back and have a good laugh. What goes around comes around. Biden haven't even taken office yet. He's not even president of the United States. And look at all the bickering that's going on. These guys can't even agree with each other, and they're not even in the White House yet. Well, Michael says, there you go. Now Biden gets to put up with this idiot. And Bob answers back with, tell her to donate her salary. And let's remember, this is also a pretty interesting situation, or outrageous of a situation, I should say. This entire time that the American people have suffered because of this coronavirus pandemic, they've been taking their salaries. All of our politicians have been taking their salaries. Who's gotten a pay cut? Cuomo has certainly not got a pay cut. If anything, he gave himself a raise last year, and he almost gave himself a raise in 2021 until he got an immense amount of backlash. And it was only until he got so much backlash that he decided to not take that raise. The insanity continues. The insubordination continues. I don't know how AOC is going to get elected or re-elected again. Yet, a lot of the left seem to love her, even though she's ousting her bosses every which way. Gail says, let the inter-party feeding frenzy begin. This is exactly what's going to happen because of the irrational and the emotional thinking. There's no logic, or very little logic, at least, when it comes to that side. It was never about or for the people. It was about special interest groups and foreign governments. Dottie says it's never going to happen. The American people are still going to be suffering for lack of jobs and lack of money to pay their bills. This $2,000 is a joke. It's an absolute joke. Who cares at this point? $2,000, $2,000, $2,600. They've killed the economy. Our government has completely destroyed America. They overreached and overplayed the pandemic. I don't know at this point how we're going to be able to rebound, because look at New York State. There's a mass exodus. There's so many people leaving New York State right now that we are at risk of losing a congressional seat. And now, all of a sudden, even though we don't have the vaccine even remotely close to as many people as we need it to be, now all of a sudden, Cuomo says, you know what, we kind of got to get back to work, or we're going to have nothing to come back to work to. Where was this logic? Where was this level of thinking 8 months ago? I was screaming from the rooftops. As soon as this state started going into its lockdown, I said, this is nuts. Americans don't save. We are so horrible with our finances that the average American has less than $100, or something like negative $100. We don't save money to begin with. So we're already negative cash flow. So now we're in a situation where we decide to lock down the state. We can't afford to be locked down for 2 weeks without the state going bankrupt, let alone 2 months. Well, we went on months and months and months. Businesses were shut down, kids were out of school, parents had to quit their jobs to homeschool their children because they were fed up with the education system, and it just went on and on and on. Absolute chaos. We knew it was a horrible idea. Our politicians didn't listen. Cuomo, now that he's being sued, let's not kid ourselves here. It's not that Cuomo all of a sudden woke up and had a change of heart. No, he's getting sued left, right, and center. Personal lawsuits are being thrown at him. More lawsuits are about to be thrown at him. So it's not that he had a change of a heart, or that he woke up and had an epiphany one day and thought, you know what, this is not a good idea. It's because he's scared to death of losing everything. He's also scared to death of not being reelected. So Cuomo is now saying, okay, I'm sorry, that was stupid. Everybody back to work, let's go. Little too late for that. Far too late for that. And now Cuomo, you, and every other Democratic governor who has made the ridiculous mistake, including Newsom over in California, is going to have to suffer those consequences. So AOC criticizing Biden for a relief package that Biden didn't even come up with in the first place. But are you surprised? I'm not. Listening to Biden this entire time, it's going to be really difficult listening to Biden over the next 4 years. And I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, I don't really know that he even has a single good idea worth even listening to. If you think about everything that he's come out with so far, here's Biden's big 100-day plan. I want to get 100 million vaccinations into the arms of Americans. Okay, then what? I mean, once everybody's vaccinated, like, then what do you plan to do with the economy? That was like his big campaign thing. I'm going to vaccinate America. Okay, but what about after the vaccinations are done? What about after coronavirus is long gone? What do you plan on doing for America? And if you ask anybody that, they just kind of stare at you. Have you guys noticed that? If you ask any Democrat why they voted for Biden, they just kind of give you that blank stare. Just kind of like, you know, they don't really know. And the only logical answer they give you, which isn't really that logical in the first place, emotional, I guess, is, well, I hate Trump. Okay, I get that. But what has Biden promised you that you feel good about? And again, that blank stare. And they just don't really know what to say. And that's because Biden doesn't really have anything to discuss. I haven't really heard anything come out of the left on how they plan on moving this country forward, which is why I had a really hard time accepting the fact that he was going to be our president. Not because Trump lost, but because I still have no idea what Biden plans on doing. So he comes out on national television every single time, and he says the same three things. I'm going to vaccinate America. I'm going to raise taxes. And in addition to all that, I can't even remember the third thing off the top of my head because I don't even know if there was a third thing. All I keep hearing is raise taxes and vaccinations. That's really kind of his claim to fame here. That's pretty much, oh, and masks. We're all going to mask up. We're going to wear our masks and we're going to beat this thing. To me, that's not really giving me the confidence that I need that this country is going to really move forward in the direction that it needs to in the next 100 days. Oh, here's the other one. Here's the other one that I was thinking. He's going to give pathway to 20 million illegal immigrants. So those are his big three claims to fame. Granting pathway to citizenship for 20 million illegal immigrants. Within his first day, he plans on passing Congress a bill that's going to let in tens of millions of illegal immigrants, or allow pathway to citizenship for tens of millions of illegal immigrants already in this country. So we're going to give citizenship to all these illegal immigrants. We're going to vaccinate the American people. And then we are going to raise taxes to pay for all of it, obviously. I mean, where do you think all this free money is going to come from? Well, it's going to come from us, our pocket. We're going to get hit with the taxes. So this is the agenda that we as America have to look forward to. It's not really exciting, is it? It doesn't sound as exciting as what Trump's done. Let's be honest. Lower taxes sounds a lot better than higher taxes. Democratic governors have tried to curb the pandemic. They couldn't do it. We blamed Trump. We said, hey, we need better leadership. Governor DeSantis proved that we didn't need lockdowns. It's almost as if every single thing that the Democrats have tried to do for this country has been so counterproductive, and we haven't learned from the right. I don't know why they are so against working with the right, because the right seem to have a little bit more of a logical agenda, an idea on how to move the country forward without raising taxes, without opening the floodgates for illegal immigrants. I'd like to think America was doing just fine. Tell me what was so wrong about the last 4 years. I bet you can't find much because our stock market's all-time highs, unemployment all-time lows up until the pandemic. And let's not forget, when Democratic governors decided to lock the states down, GDP plummets 32%. Q2 last year, Trump says, please, can we get back to work? This is insane. Open the doors back up. We have to work. The American people need to earn a living. So they did. Everybody back to work. Q3, GDP went back up 33%. When we work, we make money. America is successful. When we don't work and we sit home and we wait for handouts, America collapses. So, this is what we voted for. Get ready for the ride. It's going to be a very depressing ride at best. But who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us. I don't have too much faith, but only time will tell. When I return, we are going to discuss Section 230. Big Tech is single-handedly silencing the voice of the conservatives. They've silenced President Trump's account. They've silenced thousands of conservative influencers by suspending their accounts. And now they're trying to cancel the entire Republican Party because they want nothing to do with any new platforms that support a conservative agenda to come online. But this is where they lose big. Section 230. We'll discuss all about Section 230 when I come back, and we'll discuss how if the government gets their way, this will be the death of social media. We'll return in just a few minutes.
Welcome back to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard, and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
So the first half of the show, we spoke about the kind of insanity of AOC slamming Joe Biden for a COVID relief plan that he hijacked from Trump anyway. And the next half of the show, we're going to discuss a very serious situation. It has to do with big tech. We already know, silencing the conservative voice, but they may get a taste of their own medicine soon if Section 230 is repealed. For those of you who don't know what Section 230 is, Section 230 allows immunity for these social media platforms to be completely excused and not have to suffer the consequences for what people say on their platforms. Publishers can suffer these consequences. Social media platforms are exempt and immune because of Section 230. Let's head over to Fox News and listen to a couple experts talk about 230, and then we'll break down exactly how dangerous this is and how it could be the death for social media if Section 230 is repealed.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle looking to limit the protections that tech giants get from Section 230. But would making companies responsible for content posted on their platforms be a violation of the First Amendment? Here to explain the argument, attorney Sean Callaghan. Sean, great to see you as always. To be clear, you are not advocating for 230 to be abolished. You are advocating for it to be amended in light of the times that we live in. Explain.
Yeah, Todd. Hey, good morning. So what's at stake is the very reality of what we see and what we hear. And so the issues that face us today, Joe Biden and Donald Trump do not agree on much, but they agree that big tech and Section 230 are extremely problematic. And so the very simple reality, Todd, and for everybody out there, is that what we see is controlled and filtered by overly broad, as Justice Clarence Thomas has recently said in an advisory opinion in a case before the Supreme Court, that it's overly broad and the interpretation leads to big tech having the freedom to control what we see politically, economically, and ideologically on every front. And the left and the right and all of the discourse and the strife that our nation is facing agree on this very issue.
In light of what you just said about the Supreme Court, let's say Congress fails to act in a way that is appropriate for a large majority of the country, and you have President Biden pushing for more 230, let's call it regulation. Could you see the court stepping in ultimately and delivering a decision based upon the composition of the court that really chips away at Section 230?
I absolutely could. And the court has said that it's awaiting this very case right now. Now, disappointingly, a case was recently denied for certification that would have delivered this very issue. But unquestionably, I could see the court under its current composition taking Section 230 and saying that what was originally created to avoid issues of child pornography online, that the tech giants are now controlling every single level of what we see in our business, in our politics, and they have unbridled, unchecked power to control the public square on every level. I could see the court easily taking action and not only chipping away, but blowing a hole through the middle of what they're doing.
One case that just started this week that we could see before the court is Parler versus Amazon. Here's Parler's chief policy officer on her thoughts.
Big tech has made itself dependent on immunity, this content moderation, removing pieces of content. They have immunity for that under Section 230, and that also includes the curation of feeds and the algorithms that they use to do that increase engagement. Those are all just immune from scrutiny and from liability.
20-second answer here, sir. Critics say if Section 230 is eliminated, then there will be less speech because all of these platforms will be forced to regulate everything so that they don't get sued. Your response?
There is the ability within Section 230 to control this for what was originally intended. In 1992, 20 seconds walking through Times Square or the grounds of Columbia University, you would hear all sorts of public discourse, all sorts. We have freedom of speech and the ability to have a free access to information in our nation. This provision is being misused and abused, and the court must step in, and Congress must step in, and this is something that our nation actually agrees on.
Sean, keep us posted as this works its way through the courts, through the legislature, through everything. We'll have you back. As always, thank you, sir. Jill.
So Section 230, as we've just seen here, Section 230, if we repeal Section 230, what it does is it removes immunity for the social media giants, and then they are then held liable for everything that you and I say. We are treading so dangerously here on freedom of speech because who has the right to tell us whether my opinions are valid or not? So there's two issues here. There's the issue of freedom of speech, which is completely getting pounced on right now. And then there's the issue of whether the social media companies can even keep up with it. Because let's be honest, if they are now responsible for everything that you and I say, for everything that every extremist says, they are now in jeopardy of being sued. So what do you think they're going to do? Well, they're certainly not going to be able to moderate the millions, the tens of millions of comments on a daily basis. That would mean they would have to approve every single comment that you and I ever put online. It wouldn't happen. It's just you can't run a business model like that. That's not what social media is about. That's not what interaction is about. So I don't think it's even technologically possible to repeal Section 230. I think the Democrats, Joe Biden, can argue it all he wants because I know they desperately want to control the dialogue just like they have control of left-wing media's dialogue. CNN is under the Democrats' thumb. This is why when you watch CNN, you're only really getting one side of the story. The left's narrative, that side. They control that. They're able to control that speech and that dialogue. They can't control big tech, although big tech has controlled us. So they would be getting a taste of their medicine if Section 230 was in fact repealed. But I don't want that. You don't want that. Because if that happens, the whole interaction, the whole social media, the whole being able to voice our concerns and our frustrations online goes to the doghouse, and it's going to be brought down. And there's no way that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and every other platform on the face of the planet will be able to survive, because there's just no way that they're going to be able to control or monitor all that dialogue. They'd have to turn off comments. But if Facebook starts turning off comments, if they, let's say you post something, they approve that post, but then they say we can't really keep up with moderating the millions of comments that are going to follow these posts, so we're going to remove comments from our platform. Well, you don't have social media anymore. All you have is news. And you better believe this is going to be the argument that these lawyers fight in court. It's no wonder that Trump wasn't in favor of repealing Section 230. He doesn't want to have these guys be held liable. And yes, a lot of people will argue, well, that's because Donald Trump lies and he can, in that way, he wouldn't be able to say everything he wants to say. Listen, there's blatantly lying, and then there's opinions. And if I voice my opinion on what I think about a certain individual or a certain situation, you can't fact check that opinion. That's my opinion. It's just very black and white. There's nothing to even debate here. But when you start saying, well, we're going to now monitor your opinion and we're going to decide what we allow and what we don't allow, well, now you've just completely abolished our First Amendment rights, our freedom of speech. So I don't think anybody is going to be able to repeal Section 230. I think it's impossible. I think the tech giants would have to shut down their businesses because you would completely compromise their business model. And I don't think the government's going to want that either, because they generate a lot of money in tax dollars for our country. And we're not going to want that to go away. So I think the whole thing's a complete waste of time. I think even trying to repeal it is a waste of time, a waste of everybody's taxpayers' dollars. I think if anything, what they'll do is they'll try and amend it. And you have to remember, Section 230 came about because they were trying to control pornography. They didn't want it, to get out of control, understandably, or minors to be able to see this content. Pornography is a lot different than my opinion on politics. This is how far we've now come to treading on our freedom of speech. So it's gotten way out of control. I don't think it's going to happen. I know why they want to do it. And I do think we're going to have big tech on our side fighting this one with everything they have, because it will be the death of them if the act is actually repealed. Let's head over to the keyboard warrior cam and see what the American people have to say. Maryland says, liberals choose to selectively ignore the promises President Trump made and the actual promises he kept. Dems are comfortable with lying over and over. It's in their DNA. Ignore the liberal media. Only their gullible sheep's herds listen to their BS. Now, I understand why she's making this comment. She's making it because she's saying everything that's put in front of us is going to be very one-sided moving forward. If now the government forces these big tech companies to monitor the comments, to monitor the situation. Sarah says, I'm so disappointed that the President of the United States of America is being treated by the politicians, media, and big tech in an awkward manner. America is not an ordinary nation. America is a world-leading nation. Therefore, things must be done in the right way. The politicians, media, and big tech, they all owe President Trump an apology. I think that's kind of debatable. She's obviously defending the president. People are very sour. People are very upset right now that he was kicked off the platform. And I don't think that was just. I think it was completely unjust. I don't think he incited violence. There's proof of that. I know people want to debate it. I think Twitter is now suffering greatly from doing that, making that move. We'll see what happens. I think if their stock continues to decline in the way that it has, that the investors are going to raise lawsuits against the CEO. It could have been considered a very reckless act by a CEO to remove the president because of how much financial loss there has been to the company. But it's debatable as to why they did it. Shutting down hate speech, shutting down violent groups, completely understandable, completely respectable. I don't think there's any place on social media for any of that. It's clearly not what happened with the president, though, and it was very unjust. Douglas says it's all about the socialist agenda, censorship, political propaganda, discredit and defame the president, divide the nation, overthrow them, demoralize and conquer. Tell me that isn't what's happening right now. That's exactly what's happening. They're trying to control it, the speech. They're trying to control the dialogue. They're trying, more importantly, to divide and conquer. And what a great way to do that than take out the number one influencer in America right now, which is the president. Repealing Section 230, says Scott, would have the unintended consequence of big tech stifling even more speech. Websites would turn off comments if held liable for user content. That's exactly right. It's no longer social media if we remove the comment section. It's just news. People don't want to hear more news. We want to interact with each other. We want to talk to each other. We want to debate. And that's the beauty of social media, is that we're able to do that. Regardless of what side of the fence you sit on, you should be very worried that our freedom of speech is in jeopardy. We've been speaking a lot about it this week. Repealing Section 230 would put the nail in the coffin to our First Amendment rights, as well as social media platforms. Sergey says, hard to have freedom of speech when idiots believe every lie you say, and when those lies threaten democracy and freedom to elect your representatives and government. There's a lot of negativity I've noticed lately. A lot of negativity. It's almost like, the Democrats have taken control of the White House and the trolls have now emerged onto Fox News. I read a lot of comments from Fox on this show, and I see that they're getting more and more negative. I see that the trolls are out in full form. They used to just stay on CNN, but now they're coming over to Fox. Darren says, let's hope Americans can get to the documents and evidence about what the Trump admin has really been doing these last 4 years. Hopefully these guys don't get away with the big cover-up like they have with the big lie, which is Stop the Steal tour. All the Trump admin officials are jumping ship while the ship's going down, and they don't want to be seen as still being on board when it's going down. Hopefully these criminals didn't get to destroy all the evidence before investigators to thoroughly search things out and get the truth. This really has nothing to do with the topic at hand, but again, nevertheless, it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody's calling Trump a liar. Now, yes, there are things that he said that just weren't true, but it's going to start to trickle into other influencers, other journalists. Tucker Carlson is getting a lot of slack right now. People are crucifying him because they don't agree with what he says. Well, just because you don't agree with what somebody says doesn't mean you can silence them. It doesn't mean that you can now start to control what they say. Imagine if Tucker had to get his monologue or his show approved every single time by both sides, or at least by one side. It just wouldn't happen. So it's a very dangerous situation to be in, and I just don't think it's going to happen. Wesley says Section 230 makes it so companies like Twitter and Facebook aren't liable for what is posted on their websites. Repealing it won't force them to adhere to the First Amendment since they aren't the government. They absolutely would have to. I mean, listen, it's their company. These private companies can do whatever they want at the end of the day. They can kick people off their platform. That's not what anybody's arguing here. What we're arguing is the fact that you're silencing half the country right now. And sure, your platform, your rules. But is that really what you want to create? An echo chamber? How is that good for democracy? How is that good for the debate? It's a very dangerous situation we're going down right now when everybody's going to start thinking the same. That's called communism. I spoke a lot about communism. The writing's on the wall. We're headed that direction. Dictatorships, draconian measures, lockdowns, free money, socialism. Now, you can't say this, you can't say that. I now control what you say. It's a very dangerous situation America's in right now. And this is how communist countries behave. This is what happens when you start to lose your rights, especially your freedom of speech and freedom to protest, which is now in grave danger, especially what happened after the attacks last week. Telling us where we can now protest is a complete violation of our right to assemble. It doesn't matter where we assemble. If there's a protest, if we're protesting the government, naturally we're going to want to protest in front of the government building that pertains to the topic of protest. But now there's talk that we might not be able to protest in front of government buildings because it poses a security threat. This isn't the America we grew up in. This is starting to look a lot alike our communist counterparts. Robin says, I'm absolutely an advocate of free speech and was curious when I heard they are censoring Trump. However, after some thought, I concluded that it's okay. Well, thank you, Robin. I'm glad that you've approved this. Social media platforms have been an open communication platform without much, if any, fact-checking. Here's the thing, I can't stand seeing this word, fact-checking. Again, social media is not news. Social media is where we can go and debate. You don't have a right to fact-check my opinion. It's not how it works. Social is a major media outlet now, and posts should be reviewed for accuracy and facts. No, it should not. Again, this is not news. Robin goes on to say, if someone doesn't like it, they always have the option to try other avenues. I guarantee no reputable news would have printed or reported these things. You cannot suppress opinions. You cannot suppress my right to debate. It's a social media platform. If Robin doesn't like it, she can go watch CNN. She can go watch Fox News. If you don't like what you're seeing on social media, you're the one who needs to stop using the platform. That's what needs to happen. Social media is a fun, interactive, and very engaging environment where we can go online and say whatever we want without having to worry about being sued. That is what social media is about. And everybody is now trying to come in and control what we say on these platforms instead of forgetting about what we do on social media and go watch the news. That's really what the debate should be here. And I hope that these attorneys, these big tech attorneys, slam the door shut to this 230 Act. Like I said, I think they're gonna. There's no way they would survive. No way. If Section 230 was actually repealed, Jack Dorsey would have a lot bigger issue than just losing $5 billion in the last few days. He'd lose his entire company. It's not going to happen. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next Monday. For those of you who are in upstate New York, in my hometown, Rochester, New York, Buffalo Bills, big game Saturday night. It's great to see these guys doing so well this year. We got to keep it going all the way to the Super Bowl, baby. You guys have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out YouMadeItPolitical.com.